undergrad at the University of Central Florida, this is what I was doing with radio and television production. And then when I was praying too hard, which some of you probably know what that is, when you're asking God, what do you want me to do, what do you want me to do, and then you get an answer, you're like, oh, I really wasn't trying to do all that. I was just asking what you needed me to do. That was not the answer I wanted. And I ended up meeting somebody when I went to a conference, church conference. And I was like, I don't understand how this 6 years of training is going to intersect with church. Because at this point I was in seminary and I didn't see it. And she was like, well, there's a ministry in there. And from then, I was the person that they called for conferences to have conversations like this with pastors to help them understand how to utilize technology to share God's word. Now with COVID, it became even more prevalent. And it makes me think that, we had this thing all this time that we weren't doing the most we could have with. We picked up our phones like everybody else and looked on Facebook and scrolled through. We may drop a scripture every now and then, but we weren't pushing ourselves to use the technology to reach the world, even though that's what we were called to do. So God put us in a position where we had no choice but to change. Right? Right. And it has helped us. It has stretched us. It has stretched our congregations. And then some of those people that didn't have the privilege to sit in the room with us now have an opportunity to hear God's word, see God's people worship, and to join them in that moment. And that is a beautiful thing. So, as you heard, this would just be the first of our interactions together. I cannot tell you everything that you would need to possibly know in this moment. So we're going to meet several more times, and you are welcome to ask me whatever you need to ask, because my goal is not that you would come to attain information, but that you would implement. All about implementation, because that's when the change occurs, right? Somebody can listen to 10,000 sermons, but if they never do anything with it, what's the use? So everything we do, we're going to be implementing. And you're going to make mistakes along the way, and that's okay. Give yourself grace. That's part of the learning process. You'll mess up, you'll try again, it'll get better. Right? Right. Awesome. So, why technology? Now, there may be some of you who are like, yes, COVID happened, it's over now, I'm shutting this camera down. But I want to share something with you. And I hope that this will make you think, and every time it gets hard, you'll remember this. About 15 years ago, I was actually participating in a project called DisciplesNet. And it was a group of pastors. We were all across the country and had one person in Canada. And we would record different segments of service, email them or upload them, and then somebody would edit them together. So somebody did communion, somebody would do a liturgical dance, somebody would do a prayer, somebody would do a sermon, and all these things were edited together every week and then uploaded to YouTube. Now, it does not sound easy, does it? We did what we had to do, because this was before streaming. This was before Zoom. But the reason why that was done was because the person who was given the vision was also a chaplain. So she would go and visit people, and they would be stuck in the hospital and not be able to get to service. And some of those people would be children. And she was like, why aren't we doing something for them? My one visit is not a whole service. They're not seeing anybody, they're not engaging. Nobody's doing a sermon for them, giving them the opportunity to sing those songs that they remember or trying to hold on to. There was no access to the community. So we did the best that we could at the time, putting up our cameras in our churches or standing there and putting like a little stuffed animal on top of the camera and preaching to it so you felt like you were talking to somebody, so that we could get word and worship to these people. So even when you feel like, well, everybody in my congregation is already sitting in here, are they? There's nobody on the sick and shut-in list. There are no members of the military who are deployed. There's no college student that has moved away, that is still trying to find or search for a church home, and in that gap they could still hear their pastor. Is there nobody in the congregation, or who has ties to the congregation that's no longer there, able to sit next to you? I'm sure there probably are. So when it gets hard, or when that stream stops and you're like, they missed half my sermon, do it again. Because they are still there. And that's not even to mention the people who never walked in church. I don't remember a time when I wasn't in church, but there are some people who never stepped foot in it. And you'll get to reach them if you persist when it gets challenging. And if you remember that you were called to the world, not just the world around you. So that's why we incorporate technology. That's why it is a part of ministry. Because it allows us to share the message of God further than our feet may ever go. So what does it look like? There are going to be some moments where you're going to have to add a couple of lines to your language. And I'm going to try to make this as clear and easy as possible so it doesn't feel like a burden. Offering. Now, I did not put offering first because it's the most important. It was just listing out when I was thinking about service and sometimes how people, you broadcast your service, but offering and tithes is a part of worship. Do you have anything set up that will allow people to give? If you don't, I want you to consider setting up a way for them to give. This could be PayPal. This could be Tithely. I will talk about these systems later, but there are some things that I want to be top of mind for you so that when people come to you who are going through this training and say, hey, she's mentioning this, it won't be the first time you've heard it and you won't fight them as much. But think about how people can actually give. And I actually did this training for a couple of pastors. We had this conversation on Thursday, and they were like, oh, we put our address up. You put your address up so they can do what? Mail you a check. What's the likelihood? They're not doing that. People aren't mailing checks for their bills, many of them. Give them an electronic way to give. There is a way to give by texting. There is, of course, PayPal. How many of you have a PayPal account? How many of you order on Amazon? You are not sending them a check. They probably wouldn't take it anyway. So think about offering a way for people to actually give. And then when you are having your service, or whoever is doing the moment of offering, for them to say, and those of you who are online, do this. It's just one line, one sentence. Those who are joining us online, you can give by doing this. Whatever that system is, but make it electronic. Okay, so prayer. When I was pastoring, I would get up, I would read everybody's concerns, I would call out their names, and I would say, are there any prayer concerns? And I would let them say all their prayer concerns, and then I would roll it into a prayer. When you are online, I don't know if Sister so-and-so wants you telling people about her surgery. She might not want everybody who's logging in to know her personal business. So keep that in mind. You may have to think about how you do the prayer a little bit differently. Of course, leaving there a space for people to be able to say, look, Pastor, I have these concerns, but not necessarily saying their names and their specific concerns. Well, you can say the concerns, but not, pin it to a person when you're actually doing the prayer, so that you are keeping their confidence in people that they don't know aren't aware of all the nuances of what's happening with them. I know it's different, but it maintains the privacy. You could also say, everybody who was share some concerns with me, and then do a general prayer. And for those who are online, you can ask them if they need further prayer, they can contact. If you have this set up, if you don't have anybody that could take any calls or read any email prayers, don't put that out there. This is all about thinking about how to set up a system so that this works, okay? You could even just say, for those online, just put prayer hands in if you need a word of prayer as well. That way they have the opportunity to engage, and you'll know, okay, I've touched these people and they feel like they've been included. Passing of the peace or greetings. I don't know everybody's tradition, but in mine we do have passing of the peace where, somebody comes up to you and they say, peace be with you, you say it also with you, and that's the moment of your greeting. And when people are online, they're just watching you, oh, look at them talking to each other. But what about them? One congregation did something I thought was kind of cool. They would have people come up to the camera and say, peace be with you. Peace to you. Now, not everybody is doing that, but just a couple of people, a couple of their elders or the deacons went down and just acknowledged that there were some people online, giving the people who were watching online another face, and somebody from the congregation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of a moderator, but you could have somebody who is actually managing the comments online. Not you. Not you. Somebody else who's managing those comments that could just type in, peace to everybody online, and greetings to everyone online, and just reply to those comments so that there's some acknowledgement and engagement. Who does call and response? I know you all do call and response. Thank you. They do it too. Do you hear me out there? Let the church say amen. That's called call and response. Because you're calling to them.
Yeah, I do hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. You're calling out and they're responding.
Yeah.
So for your people online, if you hear me online, type amen. It's just small, right? But they get to be remembered. See, when you're broadcasting your service, it's not like they're sitting at home watching TV. They may be watching it on their TV screen, but they're not watching TV, because church comes with an experience. It comes with being able to engage and people talking to you, laughing with you, say to your neighbor, like all that stuff. And so if you don't get it, then you're just watching TV, and then you're most likely to disengage. Or you'll disengage from part of it. Then when that sermon comes, they may have already checked out. We don't want that. So we're going to include them in the process so that they'll be maintaining and engaging. All right, say to your neighbor. I've heard this every time. We did like a year, just like, well, you guys were at church, but I'm not pastoring right now. So I was at home, and they would say to your neighbor, and I'll look over at my husband and go, neighbor. So say to your neighbor, even if you're at home, even if you're at the breakfast table, say to your kid, say to the person sitting next to you, say to the people online, neighbor. So what I'm saying to you all is little phrases that you can just throw into your sermon, and whoever is coming to the front can say to engage the people online, so they can laugh along and engage as well. Okay, everybody tells people to invite the people to their church, don't you? You say invite people. If they're online, there are ways that they can actually invite people. So if you are streaming on Facebook, have any of you noticed the watch party?
Yeah.
Okay. So watch party is a way for, like if I'm watching something, I can invite you to watch with me. And it kind of opens it in that whole screen in a different window. And those people who are in that watch party are in there together, and when they comment, all their comments stay in that same little space. So, when you have your people online, Sister so-and-so who hasn't been there, says she may not come back because she's not sure if it's going to work out well for her, but she is on Facebook, encourage her to do a watch party. That's how she can invite other people and be having a communal experience and still be virtual. So if you have several members who are already doing it, they can actually do it together. What do you plan to have set up if somebody wants to join? Yes, they might want to join. And for those of you who are doing service and Bible studies, which is another opportunity for them to engage, have some avenue. Remember, you might be it. Even though you may be looking at them as, well, we're just broadcasting, they may be looking at you as, that's my pastor, that's my church. So what system will you have in place for them to join? Do you offer for them to join? If you are online, if you're joining us through streaming, this is how you join. Call us at, email here.
Let us know in the chat.
Ma'am, you sir?
Let us know in the chat. We say let us know in the chat.
Yes. Give them away. But even bigger than that is this right here. When they come to believe in Jesus, how do they get to you to make their profession of faith? If you have not thought about this, please think about how you want to do this. Don't leave them out there with nothing. How can you put the online people into a system you may already have set up? What happens when somebody says, I believe, when they're standing in your congregation? Is there somebody you connect them with? Some leader in the church? Is it you? But when you get to that point in your service, remember that they are there. If you want to profess your faith in Christ, call me. You can say it now. You can say your prayer now. This is what you say. And then, this is your next step. Okay. So we are not doing this alone, right? We're gonna say it together?
Right.
We're not doing this alone. You're gonna form a digital team. And I know some of you are thinking, my congregation does not have anybody in it who knows how to use a phone. What are you saying? I am saying that people have the capacity to learn. Right?
Right.
Okay. I go slow. I've done this for a long time. I can even see confusion on somebody's face on Zoom. And I will stop and say, let's talk about that. They will have guides and step-by-steps, and there will still be people who go, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. That's okay. The goal is that they would keep trying to get this. What I see some people do is, we're gonna give it to the young people. Okay, that's great. Young people, yes, many of them are more comfortable making mistakes with technology. They are, that's really the only difference. They're willing to keep trying, they're not concerned about breaking it. And the older people are, the older people are thinking, this costs this much, they're like, I don't care. And so their fearlessness means that they're willing to do a little bit more in trying. But their youth means that they're usually not spiritually mature. And sometimes their level of responsibility and dedication isn't what it needs to be for something as important as this. So, youth is not always the answer. I would encourage you to have a team that is diverse generations. So somebody who is young and fearless on that tech side, and they just will try it anyway and stick that in and hope it works. And somebody who is more mature, who can say, okay, that's great, but when you write this post, you need to use full words and not text language. You need both. You need somebody who's going to remember to put scripture in so that people know what you're referencing. Okay? Okay, your skill sets here. Yes, on the tech side, that's a given that they're okay with touching technology. But also, you need somebody who can actually write. Yeah, because they're going to be posting, they're going to be typing. So they need to have some level of skills there. If it's bad and if it's not intelligible, then that's not the role for them. And I mentioned the moderator earlier. This is why you have a moderator. Just in case people start making comments that aren't appropriate, there's somebody who is watching the feed. Does everybody know what the feed is? So when you're on social media and you see those comments, that's one of the feeds. And a moderator can either answer people back if they're asking questions. You know, if somebody missed something or they didn't hear what was said, they can actually answer those questions back. That's that person who can also say some of the greetings, say hello, respond hello when somebody types something in. That's also the person that can say, oh, that's inappropriate, let me delete that comment. I would hope that you wouldn't have to deal with it, but the likelihood is that this probably will come up. Somebody's gonna think it's funny, and they're gonna be putting comments in there, you don't want to leave them. You're not a government agency, so you can delete inappropriate comments, and you can block people, and you can delete people off. So take ownership of that feed. So when others go back and read it, they're not getting tripped up because something was inappropriate in there. So it's good to have a moderator. But your moderator needs to have good customer service too. You know. Everybody knows somebody that take church off after this service is over. So that person don't need to be moderated. You don't need somebody that's gonna clap back. You know what clap back is? Okay. That person doesn't need to moderate. You need somebody that's going to uphold the essence and spirit of church. You know, that's who needs to be your moderator. And I put family relation up here as not picking people who are all in one family, not because I don't like family, obviously, but because what if they take a trip? Then you have lost everybody because they went off to see so-and-so graduate, or they down at Disney, and everybody who ran all your technology is gone. So different family units so that nothing stops if somebody has to leave for whatever reason. Okay, here's our rule of thumb. Anyone who has to be in front of the camera should not be serving behind the camera. Can we agree to that? Now, if you're at home and you're doing Bible study and it's just you and you at your table and you Zoom, that makes sense, okay? But if you're up in the pulpit and you just ran from hitting record on the camera and you got your computer to the side facing you so you can see it, you like, is it still going? You don't need to do that. Because if something happens and you're mid-sentence, not all you going is, they can't even hear me. And so people will sit in the congregation wondering, why isn't pastor talking anymore? And so now you're more focused on the fact that people can't even hear me than these people right here in the room. It ends up being another distraction. So please don't do this. Because there will be some tech problems. It just happens. And you won't be able to control it. And you cannot run out of the pulpit, or should not be running out of the pulpit in the middle of your sermon to try to fix it. So don't have it be you. When I ask for who's going to be on your team, you can sit at the table. You can look at the recording so that you have full understanding. I am all about learning. But when it comes to actually executing on Sunday morning, that should not be you. It shouldn't even be the piano player who's sitting there trying to play and he's listening to the mics and he's like, ooh, something going on with the soundboard. Hold on, y'all, I gotta go. No, because in that moment that it's gonna take him to leave that piano and go find the problem, one, you don't have sound. Two, the people who are online are like, what are they doing? And the moment, this should be seamless. The moment that they have to pay attention to your tech, you have lost them. Right? It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you're having this wonderful experience and then your food comes out wrong. See, now I have to pay attention to the fact that somebody's cooking my food. Why isn't this right? I did not ask for this. They've been taken out of the experience. They should know that you have issues going on. So somebody else needs to be doing it, and it needs to be people that are not pulling double duty. And I know in churches you have 100% in there, but 20% are doing all the work. But at that moment, that needs to be their only job. Okay, so how are ministries doing this? There are, of course, people who are doing Bible studies online. You can still do that. If you have any women's or men's groups, they can still be online. Even if they are meeting face-to-face, you can set up a little Zoom for somebody to log in. Remember, everybody doesn't have an 8-to-5 job. Some people have that graveyard shift. Some people work in security in the middle of the night. And they can just listen to what's happening, still give them a chance to engage. There are some ministries that are sharing their big moments. So like if they have a special event like you had a couple of weeks ago where you were celebrating the seniors, even if you didn't do that in the middle of the service, there are some people who are streaming moments like that so that people can still have the opportunity to engage. So think about what else you could be doing with the technology. And it doesn't necessarily have to be you that's leading it. If you have somebody in your congregation, online or in person, that has a talent or a skill that they would like to share, like what if they're great at finance and they want to teach financial literacy? Is there an opportunity that they can lead a class online about how you actually manage your money? How you can do better with the wealth that God has given? Could you use technology that way? This may be an opportunity for you to tap into some of the other gifts that people have. Okay, so this is what our time together is going to look like. For those who are participating or who you have participating, just to give you a sense of what I'm going to be going over with them. How to create e-newsletters. The reason why you're doing this is to announce what you have coming up. It will make you really think about your calendar and get you in the habit of telling people about things in advance. You know, so they can plan for it. I would also, if you are doing this, like to get you out of the habit of putting everybody's name in the email and blasting it out via something like Yahoo or Gmail, because they're getting more and more strict on their spam. And if you come through as spam, if your email address is flagged as spam, then you won't be able to email those people anymore. And that I don't want for you. We're going to go over online donations, which would be tithing, offering. We're going to go over live streaming. I know that some of you are already doing it. So I will be covering some of the basics of doing it, straight from your phone to Facebook or to YouTube. And I'll also be covering how you can utilize a streaming platform to disseminate to multiple platforms at one time. So that if you have a desire to do that, that option is available. In that same session, I'll go over how to pull your stream video down and archive it, or you can upload it to another spot. So if you're not capturing your video like from the actual platform, what is happening is they're storing it. That platform is storing it. So if you shut that account down, lose access to that account, or if they have issues on their server side, you may end up losing your data. And we don't want that. Speaking of that, who has a Facebook page in here for your church? Okay, who has access to their Facebook page for the church? 3 people.
There's a person who operated at our church, so maybe you could tell me that's the wrong way to have it, but that's all who have access now.
Is that one person?
Yeah.
What happens to that one person that come?
That has been a problem.
See, we don't want you to lose access. So we'll talk about how to set that up so that you don't lose access, because there should be several admins on there. It should not be solely tied to somebody's password on their computer alone. Because if they leave, they get mad, God forbid something happens to them, then what? We're going to talk about using technology to create community, and some of that will be allowing them to be included, not just in the worship service, but we'll discuss what that looks like. Developing an online presence. How many of you have websites already? 3, 4, 3, maybe 4. Okay. So we'll talk about your websites. We'll talk about social media as well, a little bit further than that one. Then we're going to talk about social media automation. And social media automation is when you actually put some things, you use the tools to post for you so that you're not tied to them. So if you need something to go out at 5 o'clock that you're at work, you can actually set it up so that it does it automatically for you, and it just comes with some pre-planning. So all of those sessions that I'm going to present will be put into an online school, which the people that you put on your team will have access to. So the videos will be uploaded there. Any worksheets or guides will also be there. And in between, whoever you're utilizing is going to have some homework to do. I do expect them to do their homework. It won't be hard. It's just execution. If I train on this, you go do this. And then the next time they come and see me, I'll say, let's talk about your homework.